The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. Welcome to this week's episode of the Fed15 podcast, presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, we'll discuss the latest news and info that feds need to know in 15 minutes or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or whether you are just starting out in your career, Fed15 has got you covered. Grab your coffee, kick back, and we will tell you what you need to know but might have missed. We are your hosts. I am Katelyn Murray, and I am joined by Mr. Dan Sipe. Still in black this week, regrettably.
Yeah, and again, we're not supposed to exist within time and space here. So by the time you're watching this, it's my sincere hope that the furlough has been resolved. There's a pretty big military payroll coming up that we definitely don't want to impact our people in harm's way. Not that all of our folks who serve are not important to us. So it's interesting because Robert Reich sort of predicted that something would take place that's actually taking place, and that is that there are a number of folks in the air traffic control community that have caught the furlough flu. So they're essential workers. They have to go in and not be paid. And so they're already starting to see some air traffic delays and things like that. So hopefully some constituents will be very unhappy that their flight took 2 hours longer and they missed their connection. And call your congressman, call your senator, and let them know. We just need to wrap this up, folks. You've heard me say it a million times now. This is not meant to be a lever of government. So everybody proved they're serious. We're serious. So we'll let a shutdown happen. Now resolve the doggone thing and get back to passing. If you have to do a CR to give yourself some additional time. But up on the Hill, the job is to pass a budget. So let's get back to it. Let our feds get back to serving everyone. So that's my sermonette.
Indeed. Well, today's episode actually is going to include some more shutdown talk because we have, when we heard about the shutdown, obviously things coming through, we put together our federal shutdown prep it's basically a guide on what you should do right now, given at the time this article was written, the approaching looming threat of shutdown. Now, as this episode is being recorded, we're currently in the shutdown, as Dan mentioned. So Dan's going to talk to us a little bit about what are some things that you need to be looking at in the immediate future regarding the shutdown. And then I will talk a little bit later about another really interesting article that came out on the blog this week, a little less timely, but talking about digital assets and federal ethics, navigating things like cryptocurrency when held by a federal employee. But before we get into that, I know that people are really wanting to hear from us on shutdown prep, wanting to hear what they should be focused on. So tell us, Dan, what should we be focusing on right now?
First off, if it's still going on behalf of Team Taxpayer, I apologize by the time you watch this. There's some nuts and bolts here. And again, we wrote the article that actually was posted prior to shutdown. So it showed some things to do in advance. I'm gonna skip past those because you can go back and read that. So I'm going to touch on the things that are pretty much evergreen and will apply to anybody who's watching this particular episode. So up first is back pay. That's really getting batted around like a tetherball right now. Historically and based on every tenet of government, back pay is considered to be sacred. So The advice that I would give in this situation is do not be elevated by possible good news and do not be flattened by things that you hear where somebody's, popping off and saying, well, maybe we're not going to do that. Because I think there's so much posturing and saber rattling going on right now, and by a lot of people who simply don't understand or respect the traditions. So we're going to proceed until there is definitive legislative or executive steps on the topic of back pay to at least assume that that will take place. If you're watching this, you're either at work or you're not to be flippant. So if you are furloughed, you were sent home without pay. And if you're accepted or essential, you are continuing to work without pay. Now, some programs are already pre-funded. I know that there are some DoD organizations that already have their funding through, so they just continue. So number one, expect delays relative to pay. So what can you do now? Immediate money moves. Well, prioritize those essentials: rent, mortgage, utilities, food, transportation. It's the time to trim discretionary spending. Fortunately, this doesn't happen every single year. Once is too often, but the last one was in 2018, so we've had a little bit of time. Contact your lenders. Okay. Many of them will understand and work with you due to the hardship. If you're making additional payments on mortgages and things like that, well, number one, schedule to talk with us about that, because you probably have a pretty good mortgage rate. You may or may not want to accelerate it. But if you're making extra debt payments, this might be the time to pause that and look for a bare bones budget over the next couple of pay cycles. So what's going on with your benefits? Okay. Typically, FEHB continues, but verify how your premiums are being handled when pay stops. There's a bill moving through Congress to allow access to TSPs. Mixed emotions here. As a financial planner, I say avoid tapping long-term funds through loans or hardship withdrawals unless they are absolutely necessary, because that can really set you back from a standpoint of your compounding. As far as your leave without pay status, keep your documentation, review the rules from your agency as far as accrual and carryover and how that works for you. If you're working without pay, number one, I'm sorry. That is a lousy situation to be in. Thank you for doing it. Track your hours and retain receipts for any required commuting or travel. Again, stay current with those minimum debt payments. Avoid high interest borrowing. They're popping up. I can see them already. High interest payday loans are coming out of the woodwork. There's a great line, I've quoted it before, from the book Hannibal, which was the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. And the quote is, "When the rabbit cries, the fox comes running, but not to help." Okay, so just be very, very careful there. And again, focus on those essentials and communicate with your creditors. You will be surprised how many of them will work with you. Okay, when pay resumes, start rebuilding that emergency savings. And if you didn't have one before, let's take this time to start sneaking a little bit away to build that up. Okay, if you receive back pay, and we hope and pray that you will, that this is going to be like a normal shutdown or furlough, automate a portion of that, sneak right over into regular savings. Okay. And it might not be a bad idea to update budgets going forward with the possibility that, and I'm not predicting anything, that it might not be 7 years before the next one. Okay. I'm not saying it will. If I am prepared to apologize to every single viewer and listener from this every year for the rest of my life, if I told you to be too conservative and you had more cash than you needed on hand, I'm going to apologize to you for the little bits of fun that you would have missed along the way. I will happily apologize to anybody who gets 10 years out doing it this way and go, Dan Sipe, you're an old fogey idiot. I could have had so much more fun with that money. So consider that the first of my apologies. Okay. When to get some professional help? Consider talking to a CFP, one that knows your benefits. not just one that can pronounce the initials TSP before taking that loan or hardship withdrawal. Professional guidance can help you balance those short-term needs and keep the long-term goals and minimize damage to retirement planning. I guess the last thing, you're not in it by yourself. Okay. There are resources out there. We like to be one of them. FedFam over on Facebook. Shout out to them. They amplified this article for us. Thank you for that. So there are groups that are out there pulling for you. Biggest thing, focus on what is within your control. Know your numbers. This is now the third time I've said it. Reach out to your lenders. Let them know what's happening. They know you didn't want this. Okay. So they want to work with you and make deliberate, informed decisions about your spending and everything else. And we will get through this. To quote Maya Angelou, I've used it a lot this year. All storms eventually run out of rain. So we're here if you need us. There are a lot of places out there that you can go to get good information and stay positive, stay the course. And if you have additional time, don't be a stranger to a website. There's a lot of things you can learn there. So, Katelyn, talk to us about these newfangled coins, what you can't see, known as digital assets.
Yes. So great advice there in the federal shutdown prep. I would recommend that everybody listening to this episode really go check that out. And the thing about not being alone and focusing on what's within your control, your financial plan, your financial planning is within your control. Okay. Investment performance is not. Okay. Managing your risk, managing your diversification, having a plan, setting aside the extra cash, all of that is within your control. Okay. So if you are having trouble sorting through all of that, really, really, really consider working with a professional. There are ways to get that done. I know you might feel like there's a shutdown and so you got to cut all expenses that you possibly can. Some things are worth paying money for, right? Good shoes, good mattress, good toilet paper, good CFP. Okay. So I
think we're ahead of toilet paper.
Listen, as a financial lady myself, I'm going to need the 3-ply. Like that 1-ply stuff, it's just not getting it done. Anyway,
I'm with you.
So I want to spend just a few minutes talking about digital assets. It's an interesting piece. Like I said, not quite as timely as the shutdown stuff. I get it. But hopefully by the time this episode airs, you guys are well out of the shutdown and we're not in that place. Okay. So we put together this article and a lot of it is common sense based, right? Digital assets, we're talking cryptocurrency, is treated like stocks, bonds, or real estate for conflict of interest purposes. So what does that mean? Okay. That means on your disclosures that you have to do, if you are at that place where you have to file a financial disclosure every single year, that would be included on that financial disclosure. And even small crypto holdings can create a disqualifying financial interest if your job duty impacts their value. So, couple examples of potential conflicts. If you draft or influence blockchain policy. If you work on tax guidance for digital assets, or if you have a cybersecurity role that involves exchanges or blockchain infrastructure, even that can be a conflict of interest, right? And you can see how somebody who is working in cybersecurity would have a natural interest in investing in cryptocurrency, right? The amount that you own is not what matters here. It's the connection between your role and what that asset's value is. Okay. So here's what you should do if you are a Fed who owns digital assets and you're concerned about a potential ethics issue. You want to review your personal holdings and determine if your job duties intersect with their value. Okay. And if you have a concern there, you want to make sure that you're bringing it to an agency ethics official for guidance under US Code 208. It's Chapter 208. So you want to make sure that you are, if there's an issue, it's kind of like when you were growing up, right? If there's a problem and my kid comes to me with the problem, I'm going to be more lenient than if I find the problem. Or worse, if my kid tries to hide it from me and then I find the problem. That's the worst case scenario. Okay. So don't do that. If you have a concern, if you have a question about a holding, bring it to an agency ethics official and get that guidance. Okay. There's some actions that you can take. If it is found to be an issue, you can recuse from specific duties in your job. If that is flexible for you, you can sell your asset, which often, if you're holding it in a brokerage account, could come with some tax consequences.
Sure.
Talk through that before you pull that trigger. And lastly, you could adjust your responsibilities to remove some of the overlap if that is possible. Now, if you are subject to financial disclosure, you want to confirm whether digital assets need to be reported. In most cases, they do. A non-disclosure can create additional compliance problems, not just the ethics issue of, hey, you own this thing and your role influences it. Now we have an issue of, and you tried to hide it? You don't want to be in that situation. Trust me. So, practical tips for managing digital asset ownership. You want to keep detailed records of all of your digital asset holdings and transactions. You want to understand how volatility works in that sector. Okay. You want to step back from assignments on an ethical basis that involve oversight of digital assets when necessary. And again, coming back to it, consult early and often with your ethics officials. Proactive communication is going to protect both your career and your reputation. Okay. And it's just going to keep everybody above board. Most feds, we don't even need to talk about that because you guys are a really honest bunch. So, digital assets, just to kind of sum up, they do count as financial interests under federal ethics law. If your role affects their value, that is going to be a disqualifying conflict. Make sure on an overarching level between the ethics and the digital assets and the financial planning, make sure that all that stuff aligns. If you're somebody who's not maxing out your TSP and instead you're building a massive cryptocurrency brokerage account, have a conversation with us or with a qualified Fed-focused, CFP who is going to, advise you in your best interest, because that's maybe not the way to go, right? Different asset classes carry differing levels of risk. Cryptocurrency is fairly risky. It's fairly volatile, even though it's cool. I get it. But, you should make sure that in the grand scheme of your overall financial plan, that it makes sense and also that it's ethical. So that's that on that. If you are somebody who has digital assets, you can hit our blog at STWServe.com to read that article and kind of dig into more of the details. But as a flyover, that's kind of what we're looking at in the digital assets side of things.
Absolutely. Great advice, Katelyn. Great tips. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today. But have no fear. We will absolutely, positively, without fail, be back next week, bringing the latest updates you need to know to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed.
It's a fact. And to make sure that you are here for that episode, go ahead and subscribe to our podcast. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel if you're listening there. If you are on our website, just go ahead and click the title of the video. It'll take you to YouTube. You can subscribe. This is going to ensure that you get notifications, but it's also going to boost the signal on YouTube with YouTube's algorithm. The more people that are subscribed, the more broadly they broadcast our message. And we want to find all the feds that we can to help give you this free education, bring you into the STWS family. You can also subscribe on Spotify. If you are an audio only friend, you can subscribe there. It works the same way, same algorithmic base. And please do remember to share it with your friends and colleagues. If you've got a moment, right, and you have some feds in your life, shoot an email to them with the link, right? And then they're in the fam, they get this free education as well.
Absolutely. And for more information on these topics and more, check out our blog at blog.stwserve.com, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, The Weekly Serving. Then you get all the latest news for feds delivered straight to your inbox every single week. Don't have to go looking for it. It just shows up.
And for those who want to dive even deeper into learning about your federal benefits and financial planning for feds, we do encourage you to join us for one of our complimentary webinars. Coming up, we have a great jumping off point for any fed that's under FERS. We have our FERS webinar, very, very popular. The next session there is coming up on October 22nd. So it's kind of a quick turnaround. If you're listening to this episode, that'll be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I will be hosting that one. So I will be your lovely host along with Mr. Ed Zerndorfer, industry expert. We also have, in preparation for open season, because it's coming, it's coming, On October 29th, Mr. Dan the Man is going to be hosting a session on FEHB along with Ed Zerndorfer. That's going to be from 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. We extended it by an hour because there's all kinds of juicy, good information about FEHB and Medicare as well. So be sure that you sign up for that one ahead of open enrollment, okay? Because you're going to need the information there. We're seeing premium increases across the board.
Absolutely.
You want to have that information. So again, October 29th, 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. with Dan. Now, of course, if you don't have 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the day, maybe you're an essential employee, I get it. If you need that one-on-one approach, feel free to reach out to our team directly for a financial planning consultation at meetings@stwserve.com. Somebody would be happy to talk with you.
Absolutely. So, sorry about the shutdown. Hope it's over by the time you finish watching this. Beyond that, thank you for listening to Fed15. I'm Dan Sipe.
And I'm Katelyn Murray.
And we will see you next week.